Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Imirt Inspire. Thanks for joining us. I have my guest today, Meggy Pepelanova. Welcome.
Hello.
Thanks for joining. Let me know if there's any issues with sound, people, and we'll try and fix it. And as usual, if you have questions for Meggy, just throw them into the chat on Twitch, and I will fold them in when it makes sense. Meggy, thank you so much for joining us. So my usual first question is basically how did you end up finding your way into games?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I can hardly contain my excitement about our conversation because normally my video game circles never coincide with my real life gaming circles. So I'm really excited if I can talk about both today.
Cool.
Yeah, if I think about how I got into games, a part of me still feels like it's too good to be true that I'm working in games. I guess it still hasn't sunk in. Um, yeah, if I look back, a part of me thinks that it was, yeah, in retrospect, it was really obvious. I've been playing games since I was really, really young. Not only playing games, but making games. My sister and I, our family traveled a lot when I was younger. So it was always just the two of us inventing games, role-playing games, card games, choose-your-own adventure games. So for me, from day one, games were not just something that you played, but also something that you made. That was very self-explanatory for me. But I didn't know that it was something you could have as a career.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me. My parents from a very early age, I had a console since I was 3 years old, and we had a Mac at home already when I was 5. So I really experienced video games early on, and I was really excited, and I loved it. And
Which console was that first one?
It was a Nintendo ripoff called the Pegasus.
Hmm.
And we would get these game cartridges with Super Mario and Duck Hunt.
Cool.
And tanks. It was really fantastic. So yeah, on one hand, I was introduced to games really early on, except because we were traveling so much, I never really got exposed to gaming culture. So I discovered games in isolation. And I think that was both a curse and a blessing. Sometimes I feel like I really missed out on gaming culture. I missed out on Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing and all this. I didn't have a lot of peers that I could share this excitement with. And at the same time, I feel this was such a great thing because I could make my own thing out of it.
Yeah.
There was never this feeling that there were certain games that I was supposed to like or not supposed to like, or that you had to be good at games. These were just things that no one had ever told me. So I just really enjoyed it on my own terms. So I think that was also really, really lucky. As for how I ended up working in games, it really happened because of game jams, I guess. Classic story. I've done a lot. I participated. I thought it was so much fun.
When did you first try a game jam?
I think it was probably the Global Game Jam. Probably with some friends of mine in university. I met a lot of people who were following a game development course at my university in Breda, and yeah, I went along with them. It sounded like a lot of fun. I think, what was the very first? I can't really remember the first one. Like at some point you've done so many, they can
Yeah. Did you do the whole weekend?
Yeah, of course. It's a little bit like a sleepover pajama party, right? There's the game making aspect, but there's also the social being together, going through this experience aspect.
I've always tried to go home and sleep rather than try and keep going the whole weekend. I've only done that once. I find that very hard.
No, I really enjoy that. I think that's part of the experience.
Okay, and then you weren't studying games, right? You were studying media.
Yeah, so the way it worked was when I was in high school, I was checking out some university programs, and I was really the university I wanted to go to, the NHTV in Breda. It had a game development program and it had a media program, but the game program required that you had to have either an art portfolio or that you had to do a programming test. And these things were not an option for me. It felt like too high threshold. Didn't think I could do it. Also, I was not particularly interested in doing either art or coding. So then it was quite clear for me. Okay, I'm gonna do media and I'm gonna make movies. That's what I thought back then. I'm gonna be a filmmaker. And actually, a couple of years after I started my media program, the game development program introduced a design and production track. And I think if that was available already back when I was starting, I think I would have most definitely done that. That would have been totally up my alley. But you know, looking back, I don't really regret it because I gained so many skills in my media program. Um, I got everything from graphic design to business to film production to storytelling. We did also script writing. So I did do
These
so
are
many.
all, yeah, directly related to game
Yeah.
creation. Yeah. Yeah,
So
I've
I feel like, I feel like now I have a lot of different options of things to do. Obviously, I'm not specialized in anything, so it's also a bit tricky sometimes. Like I have this general media background, but then I also feel like, hey, but then I can offer something different from people who did study specifically game development. So nowadays I don't worry about that so much.
yeah.
Um, yeah, up until recently, I always felt because I know so many people who got into game development from a game study that I always felt like, well, they're the ones who belong in industry, and I'm a little bit of an imposter because I have this completely different background and different skills and different references. So can I really be doing this? But nowadays, I don't worry about that so much.
Doing this interview series has convinced me there's no way, like, no correct route to game development and creation. Everyone seems to have a different story, a different background, a different thing they did before. It's really cool. And it's because it's a, you know, a creative outlet that takes in different types of media. It's good to have people from different backgrounds, you know, collaborate, I've found.
Yeah, and it changes a lot, right? The exact software, the exact skills that you needed last year is different from 5 years ago, from 10 years ago.
Retro Neo Games in our chat says like tax, because I've met him. That's his background. Tax accounting into
Oh wow,
games.
there's
Yeah,
a leap.
yeah. You should make some spreadsheet games, Retro Neo Games.
You mean Eve Online?
Like, yeah, exactly. I was thinking Football Manager. So nowadays you are working for a company making escape rooms, correct?
Yes.
But we were talking about your background before. How did that happen? How did you go from game jams and media to escape rooms and design of escape rooms? And then I want to have a whole long chat about escape rooms as well.
How did that happen? Well, my first game job, I was working as a project manager and a game designer for casual games and serious games. Um, and I was doing that and I really enjoyed that. And then I got another as I was freelance. So this was a freelance gig, and then I started freelancing for a YouTube network, and um, that was really intense and educational experience. But that was also when I realized that I was really missing the games and really missing the creative industry. So around 2 years ago, I did my first, a little over 2 years ago, I did my first escape game. And the moment I did it, I really felt that that was just the thing for me because I
And
really love real life games.
which one was that?
That was called Claustrophobia back then. It's called Questomatica now, the company in Amsterdam. And the room was called Wake Up.
Wake
And
Up?
the premise is that a little girl has fallen asleep and her dream world has turned upside down. It's all out of order and she's scared and lost in her dream world and she cannot wake up. So so you get together with a team of friends,
Yeah.
enter her childish sort of fantasy world, and you have to put her world back in order, like according to the play logic, according to the dream logic. She imagines the world. And then when you put her world back in order, you set her alarm clock and wake her up so she can stop being trapped. And I can't really tell you what the best part of it was because so much about escape games is about the surprise and is about the mystery. Um, but yeah, what I can say was that there was secret passages, there was unexpected things happening, and the whole time, the whole space, the way it's decorated, the way the puzzles are designed, you're really like 100% in there. So when I did that, when I came out, I was like, oh, this is really what I want to do. This fits me so perfectly. It fits my game design interests, but it also fits how much I love designing games for people to play in real life. Not that I think there's
And
anything exciting about video games, but I'm so excited about real life games. So then I really sort of set it as a goal for myself to make this happen. And coincidentally enough, there was escape game conference happening just a few months after that of the game, and so I went there and I met so many people who were doing this, who had their own escape rooms or were working as suppliers or were looking to get into the industry. And yeah, that's where I also really felt like, oh, there's so much more to this. I can really make this happen.
And how big was the conference, for example? How many people were at the conference?
Many people, I don't know, a couple of hundred, I
Wow,
think.
okay. And that was like people came from globally or in Europe?
It was really international. There were people from Russia, there were people from Germany, there were people from Denmark, there were people from Hungary, um, there were people from Canada. So people did really come all over the world. That's because there's only a few such conferences in the world so far. I know there's a couple in the United States, there's a couple in Germany, and then there's this one in the Netherlands.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's fairly a new thing, and people really feel like it's worthwhile to make the trip to connect with others. Um, yeah, so yeah, that was really, it really felt like everything coming together at the right time. I just discovered
This
thing,
new thing. Yeah, which not everyone knows about. I've heard of them, but I wouldn't have thought there was a conference about it actually.
yeah, it's really, really curious because it only started a couple of years ago. I think like 4, 5, 6 years ago, they first started. And now I would even say they've reached peak popularity. There's several hundred in the Netherlands. There's around 14 in Amsterdam alone. So it's
And
really almost reaching saturation to some extent.
and you build them as a kind of installation, right? So you take over a space and you set up props, and it's an experience that you then go in and enjoy, and then you're kind of done with, right?
Yes.
So do you take them down? Do you run them for a few weeks, or are they permanent installations basically?
Yeah, well, there's different kinds. So most of the time, I would say 80% of the time, it's a dedicated space which has been constructed to fit a certain theme. For example, if the theme of the room is escape
The
from jail,
Dreamland, yeah.
it's actually jail cells. If
Okay, yeah.
it's Dreamland, then it would have maybe special creatures, or it would have certain special pastel colors. And the theming is really quite important in escape rooms. So usually the space is literally built for the kind of concept you have, especially if you want to have things like secret passageways, which is really a favorite for the players. Then that's something you really have to, get some architects involved, get some construction involved, and really build the space accordingly. So most escape rooms run for at least a couple of years.
Yeah, okay. So there's a pretty big development like lead up time as well then, kind of investment. Say that first one or the last ones you've been working on. How big a team would there be to create an escape room? Say that Dreamland one you were talking about at first.
Um, yeah, it's a bit hard to say because I have experience maybe I've worked with one experience company directly, and maybe I've talked to, let's say, half a dozen really in detail about what their operations are like.
Yeah.
It's really hard to generalize because a lot of these businesses are started as a small business by enthusiasts. So either 3, 4 friends get together and they start their own company, or a husband and wife team start their own company. And so it really depends on how much business experience and how much networking connections the people who start their escape room have. So if it's really husband and wife team, very often they do everything themselves, really everything from construction to marketing to operating the room. And there is many escape rooms like that. And then there's some which consist of much bigger people, which have in-house designers, which have in-house architects, which have maybe in-house actors. So yeah, there's such a big range, but you really need a big team of people, at least involving freelancers or contractors, because so many tasks. So there's not just game design, but there's also, you have to build a space. You want props, you want decor, you want a lot of hardware wiring to make. If you want to have special effects, if you want to have interactivity, especially time triggered interactivity that feels a little bit magical inside the room. Then
So there's a few things you've just mentioned I want to pick at. So you said actors,
yes,
and then you said interactivity and special effects. Let's start with actors. So would you tend to have, it's a human-led experience? You have to have someone there kind of managing the experience for the people playing?
yes.
And you'd usually have that person themed, so in character and acting to match with the experience.
Yeah. So the most common thing is that you have one person who serves as a facilitator to the game, who is there to greet the players, who is there to give them some hints if they get stuck, and who's there to help them debrief after the experience. So debrief means talk about how it went.
If they missed anything.
Solutions of any things they missed.
Yeah.
And questions they can have. So that really sort of completes your experience.
Yeah.
So that's usually sort of the bare minimum of what a escape game has in terms of human involvement. From then on, what's even nicer is if the facilitator role, this host, is actually integrated in the concept of the game. If they have an in-game character, that's even nicer. And when that's the case, it's really great if that person is a trained actor, because then they can really respond to any questions the player might ask in an in-game way. It really can be a little bit like improv theater in the sense that you never know how players are going to interpret the story, and they might come up with all kinds of playful interactions and all kinds of playful behaviors. And of course, the best thing is if the game host can respond to them in without breaking out of character, like really take the lead from the players of how crazy do they want to get or how playful do they want to get, and to allow them to live that for the duration of the game.
It's not unlike the role of the dungeon master in Dungeons and Dragons, which is to deliver the experience, but to see what the heroes generally are doing and make it work, or what they want to do.
Yeah, for sure. Except the thing about Dungeons and Dragons is sort of that your raw materials are very much your imagination. So the game master can really invent what happens next. In an escape room, the puzzles are being pre-created. They're embedded in the room. Everything has been, prepared for the players to come in and start solving puzzles or start interacting with the story or with the premise. There is, you can improvise, but not outside the physical objects in the escape room. So it's a physical game in the real life. So you have to always sort of steer them back into what's already there. So yeah, there is a lot of room for improvisation, but it is pretty limited.
Yeah.
However, there's different kinds of games. So I would say most escape games are they have this 60-minute limit where you have there's a countdown.
That's how much time you have. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what your team has to solve the puzzles inside the room. Sometimes it's more than one room. It can be a series of rooms, and your goal is to find the key to unlock the final door, right? That's where the name originally comes from, escape.
Oh, yeah.
However, this is sort of the basic premise, and so then of course there's been so many versions of escape rooms, and what is the goal when you're in there? Like, it can be instead of finding the key, your goal can be find the cure for the zombie plague, or of course escape from jail is a very obvious one, or find who the murderer is, or track down the spy who left these documents in this secret cellar. Or it can be really, really so many things. So the focus has shifted away from merely that you have to get out of here in 60 minutes to become much less focused on solving puzzles and very much more focused on a narrative goal that you have to
kind of like solving a mystery or experiencing.
Exactly, yeah. Of course, the more convincing that can be, the more it can be less about unlocking locks and putting word puzzles together. The more you can actually convince players that what they're doing is actually breaking out of jail or actually, let's say, reorganizing Dreamland, the more fun it is. I think personally, the more you can integrate that premise with what the players are actually doing. So of course, the next step to that is including actors and experience, which then sort of blurs the lines between what is an escape room and what is immersive theater. If you have
and I guess special effects then is also part of that. You said like trying to convince people that they are reassembling Dreamland. What kind of special effects would you have used in the rooms you've created?
Well, the most basic and fundamental ones I would say are light and sound effects that give players feedback about how they're doing in the game. For example, sound and light can be really helpful to let players know that they've accomplished.
They're on the right track.
Yeah, or on the right track. So that's really the most basic layer. From then on, what's really what can be really exciting is things like motion sensors, where puzzles can activate when players come close or when they combine two objects together. That can be really thrilling, especially because they don't see it coming, and it can be hidden. So that's sort of the next level of special effects. But really, using hardware to enchant the objects in the room. Enchant is a word we really love to use.
Good word, yeah.
Especially because so many of our players are not traditional video game players, and they might not be very much into technology. They might not be very much into gaming, or might not identify as gamers. So when you embed this technology and embed special effects into their experience, you really can surprise people and give them something special. So yeah, I would say light and sound is the basic, but it's think about all kinds of interactivity. Doors that unfold, spotlighting, objects that speak, or objects that respond to you. The imagination is the limit.
Yeah, I could see how that would be super exciting. Okay, that kind of brings me a little bit more up to speed of what's possible. What about how you design rooms? How do you start? You've been hired for a brand new project. Who's in charge? Like, who comes up with the theme and who comes up with the goal, and then what's next?
It depends. So there's two kinds of projects. There's escape rooms that are designed for somebody. So somebody has a brief or an assignment. Very often, companies or organizations would like to have an escape room, and then they come to escape room company.
I saw I just, when I was looking at your background, that you'd worked on some that surprised me, like for a bank created one as kind of like a recruiting tool. That's something I hadn't even thought of. So it's basically like contract work for people who are nothing to do with games and creating game experiences for them.
Exactly.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I was also not expecting it when I first heard that there's really a demand for this. But once I heard about it, it's really not surprising for me, because it's really engaging, and you don't. It has also such broad appeal. So it totally makes sense to me now that this is something that companies really want to get into. So that is an example. For example, we had a bank which wanted an escape room to engage young people to consider a career in their bank. And the thing about banks is that most people associate this with finance careers, but there's actually so many more different kinds of jobs in banks. Everything ranging from marketing, human resources, the list goes on. A lot of people would never consider that they could work there if they don't have a finance degree. So this was a way to, when this bank came to us, they really saw it as a way to engage young people with, well, what do young people like to do? The rage, the current trend is escape rooms. And so we started with this. In this case, we would start with this goal, and then we would think about what is a concept that fits that, and of course, what are the limitations. And this is the escape room we built for the Avian Emerald is a mobile experience, meaning that we built it in a shipping container, and then the shipping container would
they drive it around,
transported from event to event. So when there's career fairs, when there's open days, when there's festivities, all kinds of parties.
Does that also mean it has to be kind of self-running? Like you have to show the bank how to run it, or some of their staff, and then it's not you who travels around with it all the time?
This is something that you have to agree on with your client on a case.
Yeah.
With some clients, we do have this agreement that we will make the room, and then they are responsible for running it in the future. We can give them manuals, we can give them training, we can show them how everything works, and they can pick it up from there. Or we can have an agreement where we have people from our company who are always there for the events. So it's not something that runs every day, like a regular escape room that has a but it's something that runs on specific predetermined dates, and then we have people there on location to support the players and to lead the players for the whole day. So in the case with the Enigma, which is our bank escape room, we have our own people, our own hosts working.
Yeah. And then, so that's one type, which would be, I guess, contract work almost, or the equivalent of contract work if you're making games. The other type, I guess, is to make it as entertainment, like your own thing.
Well, I would call it the original IP.
Yeah.
And we have, we would have an idea of this is what we want to do next, this is what inspires us, or this is what fits with our previous experiences, and then we would create it from scratch. And
So
that, of course, that really changes the business model, right? Because if you have a brief from a client, then they
you have
pay percent
a
work.
budget and yeah.
Whereas the other way around is you have to finance this experience yourself, and of course you can do it by opening rooms one by one and using the revenue, like the surplus revenue from one room to fund your next experience. The challenge of that is that it takes a lot of time to where you really have the capital to build a whole new room. Or you can experiment with different different ways of financing, and that's something that Sherlock did with their latest room they launched in Rotterdam. We had a crowdfunding campaign for it, and that was really successful. So that could be something that we try again in the future. So it's funny to see there's this parallel with video games, right? Crowdfunding.
Did you run it on Kickstarter?
No, on a different platform that allows transfer with a Dutch.
Okay, so it was easier. Yeah.
The thing with escape rooms is that because you have a physical location,
it's got to be quite local.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you can't run a global Kickstarter, really.
Exactly.
It's for people within reach of Rotterdam, I guess.
Within a few hours radius max. And of course, the more special your experience is, the more you can motivate enthusiasts to travel. But that's really quite a stretch. Most people who visit escape rooms are either local within the area or opportunistic, like they're tourists. There is a very, very strong community of passionate escape room players, but that is not your core business. You cannot really rely on that. So yeah, it's much more local than video games. And I do think so much is changing in the last few years. And there's a few rooms in every country that have really made a reputation for themselves as being really special experiences, like one of a kind, the kind of experience where you talk about for many weeks later. And then once you build such a name for yourself and you have this reputation, you do become a destination. So I think that even though there's very few of these rooms right now at the present day, I think the more the market gets saturated, the more this is going to become important, that every single room you have is really so that your name is so reliable and your brand is so excellent that people know, okay, I'm willing to travel for this and I'm willing to go there.
Sorry there. And I want to ask you a lot more about the process of creation. So you've started a new room and you're working on it. You've planned it out. It's self-financed, say. How long does it take from that first scratch moment to when you open the room?
Easily about a year if it's a 1 hour experience.
Okay. And that's with, like, I'm guessing a team of 5 to 10 people, or is it smaller or bigger?
In the beginning, you would work with smaller teams. So you would work with, let's say, a producer, project lead, designer, maybe architect.
Yeah.
Maybe several designers. And then that would be during the design phase. And then there would be, and depending on how much you're planning to break the mold, this design phase can be longer or shorter. Then there is a really long stage of construction, and then there's this construction phase, which is really about building walls, wiring, electricity, safety, emergency exits. This is really sort of groundwork construction.
So creating the space, but also at that point you also know the flow and the props you're going to put in, I guess, to be able to make that space.
You need to know puzzles. You need to know what comes first, what comes second. You need to know which are the puzzles that are going to determine the layout. Ideally, the more you have designed beforehand, really the better, because construction is construction.
That sounds quite scary. It sounds like I'd want to have done a few rooms before to get how to do it.
Yeah, of course.
It's a bit of a chicken and egg problem.
Of course, and I think really the big challenge is prototyping the puzzles, because you prototype the puzzles before you start construction.
So how do you prototype them? What do you do?
Yeah, that's something I'm still learning after all this time, and I really try to get better and better at this. Ideally, you can do a lot of you can start with paper prototyping, just like with video games. There's a lot of things you can test out just with paper. Then you can start making sort of use furniture in your office or your room to sort of replicate certain spatial things. You can try to make things out of cardboard and wood and foam as much as possible. The thing about escape room puzzles is a lot of them involve tangible objects, 3 dimensions, different textures, using your hands, using different capabilities of your body to solve puzzles. That's what makes it fun. It's in real life, right? You don't just want to solve brain teasers
Yeah.
or Morse code. You want to use your body to do fun things. So when you're prototyping, you can use a lot of everyday materials to simulate that, and we do try to do that as much as possible. The only challenge is that once you actually use the real materials that you want to use, they might not behave in the same ways as your prototype materials did. And we actually, one of the last experiences I made, we had exactly this problem. We have a remote control, a remote control toy that's part of a puzzle. You can navigate a maze with it. And when I tested it in a regular room, I tested the range, how far can you get with the remote control for it to work, how responsive is it, how quickly does it turn, how quickly does it stop, how quickly does it start. So I tested all these things and came up with the maze design and everything. And then when we actually had the final build, we had we built the maze into the floor, and we had first like glass on top, so players could walk over it without discovering the maze for a while. And then when we actually built that, we discovered that the glass dampens the remote control signal, and the car was no longer responding the way it did in all the tests. However, at this point, the maze was drilled into the floor, glass was ordered, everything was installed. At this point, there's you still have to change the design or change something about the implementation or change something about the hardware, but you have to do it within a narrow margin of how much time you still have left before launch and how much you've already invested in the materials and how much everything's already built. But this always happens. It's you have to do as much testing as possible as early as you can. There will always be this final moment where the design you have in mind and the way things actually built and work together, there's like a gap between those two, and it's really that's where sort of the test of you as a game designer comes in. Where how can you make the best of it? How can you be really resourceful? How can you come up with new solutions that are not going to cost a lot more and are not going to require a lot of changes? And ultimately, we rewired the antenna. We built it into the wall, and
it was all right.
It's just fine. But yeah, that's the kind of thing you have to really be not be so attached to one particular solution that you have to be able to think and apply it at the end.
And what about, I guess, the linearity of the experience? Do you build a series of tasks to be solved, or an experience to be explored in any order?
That's a choice. It's a choice you make, depending on what you want for your players. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. A non-linear experience very often leaves players confused because at every single point they have a lot of different things they can begin and a lot of different things they can work on.
Yeah.
So that has the disadvantage of being confusing, especially when you have a time limit. So this is not like let's say like an adventure game on your computer where you can really take all the time to try all the options. You have this time limit and it stresses you out. But on the other hand, if you have a really linear experience, it can feel very limited for a lot of players, especially experienced players. You also have a team of people, very often 4 to 6 people. So if there's only one task at a time, very often there's people just left behind doing nothing. So ideally, I would say most escape rooms have a hybrid approach. So there are some moments in the game flow where there's 2 or 3 tasks available to be done simultaneously, and maybe sometimes it's even necessary to do them simultaneously. And then it sort of flows back into linear again, and then maybe branches out.
So like kind of stages of, like you mentioned, multi-room ones. That's obviously an easy way to solve it. You're like, here's a few puzzles, and when you solve them all, room 2 opens.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a lot of conventions. Like over time, there's certain design practices that have become dominant in escape rooms. For instance, the idea that every object is used only once and never again in the room. This is so players do not
you're done once.
Oh yeah, it's like the rubber chicken and the rope pulley, right? Like at some point in an adventure game, you try everything with everything because you don't know how to program.
Yeah.
That was sort of what led to the demise of adventure games, because at some point that is no longer fun. So if you have objects that have to be used again, or if you have too many red herrings. So red herrings is a word for an object that looks like it could be useful or looks like it could be a clue or part of a puzzle, but it's not. If you have too many of those things, it can increase the challenge in an interesting way, but it also increases frustration, and you have to be really, really careful with that. but of course, I also have mixed feelings about design conventions in the sense that a lot of escape rooms have really started to look a lot like each other. Like it's really become predictable. Like, okay, you have 60 minutes, you know, you almost always have a secret passage which is hidden behind the wardrobe or something, or behind the, you know, the mirror, or behind something that's really big. So you have a hidden passage. It's, you know, you use every object once. You have very often a blacklight puzzle. You have very often some kind of translation puzzle, which is either
Yeah.
more symbols.
Yeah.
Have like a, you know, Lara Croft temple kind of puzzle very often. Like there's all these things that recur again and again, and if everybody follows the same design rules or just even the same best practices, then you have a really sort of homogeneous experiences.
That's exactly what happens in digital games as well. You know, the conventions get established, they're pleasant for a player, but then you want to challenge people and surprise them again. So you need to kind of go through that series of convention and surprise and back, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So
and I think for now it's really okay. I'm really excited about those designers that are trying different rules, that are trying different formats, trying different genres, trying to mix it up a bit. I'm really appreciative when I see that.
what about integrating digital experiences somehow? I presume this is happening in escape rooms, so augmented reality style stuff.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're asking this because I'm so passionate about this topic. This has already been done a little bit. So Sherlock has already done this in one of their rooms, in the sense that you have a little mobile game that's a prequel to the Vault escape room. And it takes about 15 minutes.
So do you do that while you're waiting as a group to go?
No, you actually get a link to the app when you
book.
When you book.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so the idea is this will get you up to speed on our theme and.
Exactly. Yeah. And the theme of the Vault is that it's a breaking experience. You assemble a team of thieves to break into a room rather than break out of it.
Cool.
And the app is actually a training for how to crack a safe. And I actually really love the story. This was all created before I ever joined Sherlock. But I'm so thrilled with how they approach this. The room that you break into as a team is a historic location, and it actually came with a real life vintage vault,
cool.
which had these sort of circular locks that you have to enter a number combination on. And they decided to keep this vintage safe inside the room because it's just so authentic and it looks so cool. But the problem with it is that it's really actually difficult to open, and not a lot of people have experience entering a combination into a circular lock like this. So one way to help people avoid getting stuck at the very end when you're supposed to be in the grand finale, it's like climax, you're supposed to open
and then if it doesn't work, you don't know if you just have the numbers wrong or if you're just doing it slightly wrong. Yeah, it should be very confusing.
It's really good for it to be hard because it's a climax. But then if it's too hard and people get stuck there, then it really ruins the experience. So this this mobile game helps you train before you start to experience with how to open the lock. And you get to see, which is one of the advantages of digital, is that you get to see things like a slice through of what the lock looks like inside, and you can have like a little tutorial of it. Of course, it's also within the premise of another game, of a digital game, but it's basically training you for the real life experience. And I think that's a really good use of how digital and real life can come together. I also really like that the app is something that you do before, so that when you're in the room with your friends, you're not on your phone, and there isn't somebody who's on their phone, but you're all there face to face with each other, which I think is actually one of the big appeals of why people want to do escape rooms.
Yeah, the social, probably not dissimilar to board games, but obviously in a more unique experience.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of appeal in I would say maybe the use case, or maybe what drives people to go to an escape room, this desire of quality time, being together with people. But yeah, so this is one example of using digital and real life gaming. There is examples where you have to interact with a computer or an iPad or a device inside escape rooms.
Yeah, that's kind of more along what I was thinking. So again, I was thinking from there's a few board games now that use a companion app that you put it on a tablet, say, that guides you through the experience of the board game you're playing.
Yeah, there is some of that. There is more and less sophisticated ways of doing it. I do know there's a escape room in Melbourne where it has a science fiction theme, and you can there's a rogue AI, a little bit like in Odyssey 2001, and you can communicate with this AI through keyboard interface. So it taunts you and it misleads you, and sometimes you have to trust it, and sometimes you don't. Um, as far as I understand, that they use a Wizard of Oz technique in the sense that it's still a person
Hmm.
behind the scenes. But there is a lot of these sort of small examples where there is a piece of technology like a digital interface within the room, but that's not what necessarily I would call integrated or not going really far. What I
Yeah.
think is really interesting is the use of VR in escape rooms. There is there is one in Utrecht called Escape Through Time, which
Yeah.
has a really really cool time machine premise. You go in the room and you play you play in the past. All the puzzles are first themed sort of contemporary slash past, and then the VR is the time machine, which then transports you into the future. And the way they do that is really jaw dropping. I'm not going to spoil what happens because people should try it out themselves. But they really managed to use this VR component as the
But
time travel mechanic.
is it
And it
one
works.
person in the group? Is it using VR?
No, it's everybody puts on a
Everyone.
headset,
Okay. Yeah.
and while you put on the headset, and that's when you go into this wormhole.
Yeah.
I can't really tell you more about what they do and how they do it, but it really, really, really feels like you're traveling through time,
That's
and
cool.
you really cannot recognize,
Where
one
you
is
reappear. So I guess that
time.
gives a chance to change the room as well if everyone's.
Well, I will let you try it. You should
I'm
try it
just
out yourself.
guessing as a game designer. What would I
But
do?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really really surprising because you think like, okay, I'm just gonna see like some special effects in this
Yeah.
VR, and then I take it off, and it's gonna be like we pretend now that it's the future, but it's
Cool.
really not. Like when you take off the headset, it really feels like you're in the future, and
I was
and
also
that's what.
thinking when you said use of VR, I was thinking of things like Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes,
Mhm.
where one person is in VR and the rest of the team are helping you. So you could have an escape room where there's a VR headset where you need to do things in the VR world that are related to the props or the puzzles in that the rest of the team are discovering.
Yeah, I think there's so much opportunity for things like that, and I think they haven't been done so much. I think that's mainly because usually the team capabilities are very different. So people, uh, like experienced designers and escape room companies very often have very much real life design capabilities,
Yeah.
and video game teams have all these digital design capabilities, and it's rare that people from both worlds work on the same projects.
Yeah.
So it's really the mostly the limiting factor. And I think the other limiting factor is maybe I think some escape room creators might feel that this sort of hinges on the purity of the experience, as in people are they have mobile phones all day long in their real lives. Do you really want to bring more of that?
True.
Uh,
Yeah. You want to deliver a different experience.
yeah, and I don't agree with that. I do see the point when it comes to certain themes. For example, if your room is set in the 19th century, it doesn't make sense to have an app. And I also feel like it should really have added value. It should really add something that you cannot have without. And this is something that we think a lot with my colleagues at Sherlock. We think a lot about how can we do this in an interesting way, especially because there's so few examples of it out there that we really want to be the ones to invent something like this and to push it further. I'm really excited to explore very much this possibility of having a transmedia approach where you do have a digital game which influences the physical game, but not
Yeah.
necessarily at the same time.
That would be very interesting.
That I can make certain choices, and those choices are reflected in the real life game. And I think what's a really big advantage of that is that when you're inside an escape room, you just have those 60 minutes to to catch up on what the premise is, where are you, what is the situation, and what do you have to do. And it sounds like a long time, but because during those 60 minutes you're orienting yourself the whole time and seeing things for the first time, it actually time goes by really fast, and you don't have a lot of tools for exposition. So video games are really good at exposition because they use images and text and music, and you can tell so much about this fictional world that you're in a video game. And same for movies; they're really good tools for exposition. But in a real life space, you don't want to confront players with a lot of text. You don't want to confront them with a lot of audio or even video. So you, as much as possible, you have to resort to environmental storytelling, and that ultimately, limits how much content can you push to players, like how much story can you give them, how much how much context can you give them in the puzzles. So I
What
think,
what about hidden content? You know, the equivalent of in a digital RPG background lore and books and conversations that you don't need to experience, but it's there if you want to experience. Is that possible? Because you have a time limit. You don't want to have too much of it, right?
The question is how to make it valuable. You can provide extra content. How do you get players to invest in this? So when players are playing a video game, very often they spend 5, 10, 15, 20 hours in this world. So when they discover a secret, it feels valuable because you're so invested. If, from beginning to end, your whole experience is 60 minutes, and it includes talking to your friends, and it includes finding out where you are, and it includes finding out the pieces of the puzzles in the first place, it's difficult to get that investment where if you discover like a story secret, it feels like it matters.
Yeah.
What very inherently matters is when you encounter a surprise. So if you find a special object like a special scanner or a treasure or a secret passage or a trapdoor, those are things that are inherently fun. You don't have to know anything about this world in order to enjoy it. So those kind of surprises are great. Narrative surprises or narrative rewards are very difficult in escape rooms, which is why I'm so excited to explore transmedia. If you have a prequel, which is a video game, or a prequel, which is a graphic novel, or anything that exposes players to the story world first, it can even be existing IP.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. If you were making a Pirates of the Caribbean escape room or something like that, you have a pre-existing idea that people know.
Yeah, exactly. Because then people know the characters, people know the world, and then as soon as they go into the escape room, they can immediately sink into it. And when you have those little hidden surprises or gems or story references or optional content that is just there for pleasure and entertainment, then it feels really really rewarding and really great, and you can instantly shortcut to meet players. So yeah, I'm really a huge fan of doing that. And I would also be super excited to do escape rooms based on existing IP. And I know that there are some
that must exist, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Cool.
Especially for conventions, there's temporary escape rooms. I know that HBO did one for Game of Thrones, which sounds like a really, really fun thing to work on. I know there's, especially for series, I know there have been convention escape rooms that are
that makes sense.
Let's say like 15 minutes, so they can accommodate a lot of people. But that sounds like really, really, really fun, and the players really love it so much because for them it feels like I'm stepping into this world that I already love so much.
Just have a couple questions. Drainzy was asking, where is the place with the time machine room? Did you say Utrecht?
Yeah, it's in Utrecht, and it's called Escape Through Time.
Escape Through Time in Utrecht. And generally speaking, is saying that she'd really like to take a shot at making one. So let's say you've never made an escape room before. Is it possible to make one? What's the lowest budget way to make one for an event, like a one-off? Is that even viable? How would you get started?
I think there's a lot of low threshold ways to do it. I think.
What's the game jam equivalent of making escape rooms?
I think the game jam equivalent is making scavenger hunts.
Okay. Yeah.
It's different genre, so I'm sure there will be people who fervently disagree with me because it is a different genre. But it does teach you how to think about physical space, how to think about what are all the different ways that players could react to this in real life. And it's really low threshold in the sense that you can do it in your city or in your park or in your house. So that's really the lowest threshold. You are very limited in what you can do because it's mostly sort of sending hints from one location to another. But I think that's a really, really great way to start. And I've done a lot of scavenger hunts. And
so you could ramp up from there. So you could do some scavenger hunts and then go, okay, my new scavenger hunt is all within this one room.
In a way.
Which is kind of you're getting towards an escape room experience then.
Yeah.
So it's about exploring the space and making it much more dense.
Yeah, I think in a way then what you'll be missing is these more physical kinds of puzzles, where you have to rearrange objects or combine objects or manipulate objects, which is a big part of the fun of escape rooms.
Mm-hmm.
But then what you could definitely try is make those puzzles in isolation, and they don't have to be really difficult. So I guess that's a really low threshold way to start.
Because it seems quite daunting. It seems like there's a lot of expertise building, like all kinds of moving parts. You have to run it. I'd say they're really expensive to create. Seems like an almost impossible task to get there and get started.
Yeah, if you want to do like a fixed location or even have your own container, I think that's very hard. But there is so many smaller versions. For example, there are escape rooms in a box or escape rooms in a suitcase where that you need are inside that briefcase.
And so you can set it up wherever you want.
Exactly, and this is something that's used a lot for classrooms. So there is a lot of interest in educational games, and a lot of teachers are thinking about the potential of escape rooms to engage people in a social, collaborative way. And so there's this concept called Breakout, which is about these boxes full of educational content that you have to solve escape room-like puzzles in order to progress through the content.
That's really cool.
Of course, the answers require certain knowledge, whether history or chemistry or biology. So it's a way to engage kids in groups of five, 6 in a classroom to play a game and learn at the same time, which is obviously the holy grail, right? Games and education is what everybody really wishes to get right.
And they're collaborative. Like there's also social skills being teamwork and leadership that are being learned there as well. That's cool.
Yeah, so that's something that's quite important about escape room puzzles is you always want to design them in a way where several people are necessary at every time, at any moment, rather than one person can just dominate and solve everything by themselves.
Yeah.
So ideally you have, for example, asymmetrical information, or you need multiple hands in order to solve something, or you need multiple perspectives in order to solve something. So that's really, But just to get back to the original question about what's a low threshold way to start, I would say scavenger hunts. So also escape games, or like these kind of puzzle, like tiered puzzle games that are designed for indoor spaces. Or if you think about it, there's also this new genre of escape games by post. I really good close friend and collaborator of mine, Ruth Cole, is making packages that you receive in the mail, which have escape room-like puzzles that you can solve with a team around your living room table.
Cool.
And it's a similar experience where you don't have to leave, you don't have to go to a dedicated location, but it comes to you. And that has its own design challenges because you cannot really use the locks and keys to limit the information flow of the game. Like you cannot have these surprises be locked away literally, at least not more than a couple of times. So you have to be really clever about how do you have all the components of the game available
within the package, yeah.
But still have some kind of plot development or some kind of surprise or things to uncover as they play. I think that's really fascinating from a design point of view. But that's also something that a beginning designer can really try out for themselves. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's low threshold, so that's another thing they can do.
That's very interesting and comes with its own set of constraints. You know, it has to fit in a box. You can't put any live animals in, you know.
Yeah.
But stuff like what you mentioned, like keys and doors, those kind of big physical props, they're all gone. It's more about, really interesting. Hope that answers your question, generally speaking. Look forward to trying your first escape room when you do it here in Dublin. Cool. What about, so there's a couple things, like I was thinking about escape rooms and digital games and looking for the crossover things around designing them. So one thing I was thinking of was the difficulty process and balancing. So there's no easy mode or hard mode, right? There's just one experience. But I'm guessing you have someone there to help guide the group and provide hints. That's part of the...
Some escape rooms actually provide easy modes and difficult modes.
Okay.
I appreciate that, actually, because as an experienced player, I really love to try my hand in difficult mode. Although I'm by far not the best escape room player that I know. I know so many people that are so much more hardcore and fast than I am, but I do like the challenge. So, but most of the time, indeed, it's just one difficulty setting, and what really sort of helps even the playing field is that there is a person who can give you hints.
Yeah.
And that's really, really, really helpful. But the challenge is indeed that your audience ranges so much from little children to older people. Very often, people who don't ever play games and do not see themselves as players. So you have to successfully engage all of them, ideally without using any pre-existing knowledge. So nothing that you shouldn't expect them to know, like what is a Caesar cipher, or expect them to know the lyrics of a song, or expect them to know Roman numerals. These are all things that you might think everybody knows, but a lot of people might not know. So there is this challenge that the audience is so diverse with different skill levels. I think in terms of design challenge is also that it's a live experience. It's very unpredictable, uncontrolled. It so much depends also on the click, the click of the group. How do they respond in the moment? What is the mood of the moment? How do they click with the host? Are they having a good day? Are they having a bad day? And as a game designer, your instinct is for control. You want as much as possible to know exactly how things are going to go and exactly what they're going to do next. But in a setting where you can't predict what people are thinking, very often they come up with all kinds of things that you might never thought about. And this really
do you feed that back into the room ever? I mean, do you ever run it and in the first week you're like, everyone kept getting that thing wrong and jumping ahead to this other thing, we need to fix that and change it?
This happens all the time.
Okay, yeah.
And the thing is, you think you've thought about every possible option, and then people do some really unexpected things, and sometimes dangerous things. Like we have in one of my lessons, there's this thinking outside of the box challenge, where you have to combine unlikely objects together. And one of the puzzles is you have to put a mug into a desk lamp. You have to like screw it in the desk lamp. I promise it makes a bit more sense. But then, they had this clue that they had to think outside the box and do something with a light bulb. And then they started unscrewing the real life light bulbs from the ceiling, which, could have been potentially not so safe.
Sure. Yeah, could have been
something that we
hot.
could have seen coming. In fact, in retrospect, it is so obvious that we, should not have missed this. And then once this was clear, we just had to take the lights off the ceiling. We couldn't take the risk that somebody was going to play around with them, so we just completely removed the lights altogether. So things like this happen.
Yeah.
You have to really foolproof. Like, people will touch everything. People will open everything. People will try they will break a lot of things. They will try to combine everything. So those first weeks of testing are so important, so you can really
kind of foolproof the whole experience.
Exactly. And still then there will be some things that are completely obvious and easy for some people and completely difficult for others, and you have to sort of decide for yourself what is the balance that I want to strike of the difficulty of this room. When do I say this is the right level of difficulty, even though for some people it's still going to be too easy and for some people too hard. And this is something that I have friction about with other escape room designers. When I go to an escape room, very often afterwards I want to chat with the owners and chat with the people who made it, and sometimes I want to address some puzzles that I didn't think worked so well. And then the challenge of that obviously is that if you didn't get the puzzle, if you couldn't solve it, or if you struggled a lot with it, then it sounds like you're just being like sour about it. Sore loser who cannot handle the fact that the puzzle was above your capabilities. So if you try to critique, it's like, I didn't think that was designed so well because this didn't match that or was not integrated with that. And then very often escape room designers are resistant to hearing this because they're like, you just didn't get it. And I think what we need is really this language of when is a puzzle difficult because it's poorly designed, and where is a puzzle difficult because its logic is demanding. And that's something that I hope to develop my own vocabulary for, so I can express my intuition better.
What was difficult by design rather than difficult by just being very hard to manage, rather than difficult to solve. Yeah, I think it's the exact same thing happens at digital games, and as designers it is hard to accept that feedback, particularly when you have a viewpoint. So you're like, no, I understand that, it makes sense, and people are telling you that they're not getting it.
Yeah. Especially because you get attached. I mean, I also get so attached to. So, I mean, some things are really the your brainchild, the result of so many hours of testing and building, and it can be so hard to invest so much time and energy, and sometimes even money, in an escape room puzzle, and then have and then have it not perform well at this late stage when everything's built and you're running those first weeks of tests. To make the difficult choice of scrapping something is it's heartbreaking. So I can totally understand, and I know that Sherlocks have done this a couple of times, even at a very late stage, and that's why I'm really I'm really proud to be in this working partnership where I feel like, okay, if something is not working, we're going to take the hit, which can be really hard. And I hope to also keep this discipline for myself, because it's easy to see it in other people's work, but when it's about your own work, it can be hard to keep that vision.
Yes, definitely.
Stay humble. So I hope to keep that.
Great. Well, tell you what, I'm going to leave it there. I've already kept you for over an hour. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today, Meggy. I learned a lot that I did not know about escape rooms and design and the crossover with games. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll be in touch again with our next guest. Thank you, Meggy, so much.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.